What we hear from Scripture today is about night. Nicodemus visits Jesus by night to avoid judgment from the other Pharisees. The apostles are freed from prison by an angel in the dead of night. Funnily enough, these are actually quite positive, productive encounters. And yet the concept of night usually has such negative connotations. Night means tiredness. It can mean dreading the events of the next day. It can mean hardship, particularly if you've ever worked a night shift. It can mean illegal activity. It can mean crime. Consider those who prey on the innocent, robbers, predators. It's much easier to get away with a crime at night, where witnesses are fewer and security footage is harder to decipher. Night can mean power for these criminals, these predators. Night can mean fear, anxiety, depression, dark thoughts, thoughts of desolation, abandonment, and self-abuse. Night or darkness is an absence of light, and yet it relies on the concept of light to even exist. Night is the contrast to day, to light. Night is also where some people feel free. The demands of their job may be over. The children are asleep. Nothing left to do but have some me time. And yet night is also God's time. Night may be the absence of day and everything it represents, such as hope or clarity, but night does not mean the absence of God. In fact, I believe that God is most present, most palpable in the night time. It is because of all those negative connotations of night that this is so. The presence of God is magnified by the sheer need for God in the darkness. God is needed to have mercy on predators and their victims, on criminals and those they wrong. God is needed to work on the hearts of those who are having thoughts of hurting themselves or others. God is needed to keep people safe on the roads and in the workplace at night, when our own human concentration span is typically at its most threadbare. God is needed to keep the homeless, the mentally ill, and the substance addicted safe. You see, there is actually a huge amount of the work and prayer of the church that really needs to happen at night. Because we as disciples are engines, are instruments of God's love and charity in the world. We are the ones who need to find a way to build his church even in the darkest hours of the night. God is active at night. The vulnerable are active at night. Those in need of mercy are active at night. Wouldn't it be wonderful for the homeless to be able to find a place to sleep in relative comfort in the facilities of a church or parish? Now, I've seen instances where this hospitality has been abused. People have trashed churches and other buildings made available to them. But my thoughts on this are that we need to be more than buildings. If the church is only buildings, then the buildings have become little more than expendable resources. Is it any wonder then that people trash them as they would public toilets? Respect for the Lord will come from knowing that he is there, not just in the bricks and mortar, It will come from knowing what he is there for. Nicodemus had faith that Jesus would not judge or discredit his struggle with faith and the role of religious authorities. He had faith that Jesus would not abandon him during a sleepless night. He had faith that while his own soul was troubled, God would be working, even in the person of Jesus. People who wander into a church, even at night, or when shelter is on offer, they might just want to sit. They might just want silence. But I would argue that, particularly in this day and age, no one walks into a church and sits unless they are looking for a sense that God is real. I don't mean people that poke their heads in. I'm talking about people who come and sit, or people who sneak into a back pew while a service is clearly in progress. Imagine if people knew that they could come and sit in a church at night. Imagine if they could sleep in a church at night. Imagine if they knew that there would be someone there to embody the presence of God for them. The people that seek this presence of God in the physical or even in just the spiritual night, they are like the apostles in today's reading from Acts. They are prisoners. They are prisoners of the world, prisoners to the judgment of others, prisoners of their own minds. And they have this angel voice that speaks to them, perhaps sometimes a little too quietly or too easily dominated by extraneous noise. They have this voice that says, I need you for something. I need you in the morning. I need you in the daytime. So I would really appreciate it if you survived the night. It says, here, let me set you free from prison. Let me set you free from the darkness your mind and your perceptions are conjuring for you. It says, the night is not going to defeat you. The night is going to make you stronger for the purposes for which I need you. The challenge we face as Christians is not only listening to that voice ourselves, but to be that voice for others. To make the night, physical or spiritual, a time of growth, a time of mercy, a time not of freedom per se, but of liberation. The night may hide the darkest of our thoughts or actions, but we need not act with moral ambiguity. Act not from the freedom to do whatever you like, but from the position of being liberated. And I understand the difficulty, because we may not feel a sense of liberation. We may not feel a sense of God's light in the darkness. We may not feel guided in our pursuit of spiritual enlightenment. How then can we aid others? By faith and practice in mutual flourishing as part of our spiritual and cultural DNA. That is, have faith that others are searching for Jesus and make him known as you would like to know him in a time and place that is arguably the most difficult. Be the person waiting in the church at night. That's why I encourage taking ownership of the night, being as Christ was to Nicodemus, being as the angel was to the apostles, finding ways to make ourselves available to those for whom the night brings fear. Because as we see at the very end of the reading from Acts, the authorities of the world actually fear the day more than the night. The temple police were afraid that the people might stone them for imprisoning those who taught with the Lord's authority. We need not fear the Lord's absence at night. We must embrace his presence. We are not prisoners, but rescuers for those who are yet to see and believe. The night is indeed for stillness. Let us consider how we can truly aid those who are not still. Let us consider the presence we need to be for those whose longing for the Lord is most acute in the dark.